Us off. Welcome everyone to our March 2025 Airflow Town Hall. Appreciate you all joining us today. We're going to cover some interesting topics. It might be a slightly shorter town hall. We have the Airflow 3 release coming up in April, and so it's all hands on deck. So a lot of speakers are not available today. So we're dedicating it to that, and then we'll have probably a overtime one in April with all of that news for you. So thanks everyone for joining. First off, we're going to hear about the Airflow survey results from Tamara, who did the incredible work of analyzing them for all of us. And I'm really excited to hear about that. Next, we're going to get, I think, our last Airflow 3 update before it's officially live from Constance, which is very exciting. Then we're going to go deep on one of the new features we can be expecting in Airflow 3 based on a PR that was presented by Brent. And then we're going to hear about our Lagos meetup. So we launched our first meetup, we launched our Lagos chapter this month. And so we're going to be hearing about that from Victor, one of our champions who did the amazing work of getting that off the ground. And as always, I will give you a ton of reminders about Airflow Summit that I hope you listen to, and then we'll head out. So if this is your first time joining a town hall, we don't make decisions on these calls. That's reserved for the dev list. So anything we discuss here, if it's a decision-worthy item, please take it over there, and it needs to be discussed there. Obviously, this is open source. Anyone can attend these town halls. I record every single one and post them in the town hall channel of Airflow Slack. So make sure that you join that channel if you want to access the recordings and the meeting summaries and the links and everything else. So with that, I want to pass it off to Tamara to talk about the 2024 Airflow survey results.
Yeah, thank you. I'm talking about some of the results because you do not want to have 3 hours of just slides and graphics. As you may have heard, it was the largest Airflow survey ever, potentially the largest data engineer survey ever. At least we couldn't find a bigger one, and we tried to find one. So it has some very interesting results, and I tried to pick the ones that you may not directly see from the infographic, results that are very relevant for the Airflow community in general, and some results where I went, that's weird. So if you go to the next slide, Brie. This is the general overview. So this is one of the first things I did when I got the data. Since we asked for people's cities, I plotted them, and we got 5,255 responses in total, which is amazing. And more than 5 times what we had last time. And we got responses from 534 distinct different cities in the world based in 116 countries. So you can see that on the slide. Each little dot is a person, and if there were several people in the same city, the dot gets bigger and more orange. So Airflow is really all over the world. And you can already guess a little bit where the biggest cities were, but I want to point them out specifically. So if you go to the next slide. First up, we have Central and South America. And here we have the city with the most people who responded to this Airflow survey. And by proxy, they can now claim to be the Airflow capital of the world. If you want your city to be that next time, get more people from your city to respond. But congrats to Sao Paulo with quite a lead, actually. 483 people from Sao Paulo filled out the survey. There were also quite a few other cities that were in the top 20 that were in Central or South America, like Brasilia, Rio de Janeiro, Belo Horizonte, Mexico, and Buenos Aires. So big hub of Airflow use here. Yeah, Brazil Airflow Summit. We'll see. But yeah, big thanks to everyone in this region and a great hub for Airflow use. If you go to the next slide, please. Now, the second largest hub is probably India. So the second largest city was Bangalore with 269 people responding to the survey. And then we had Mumbai, Delhi, but also Bangkok, Chennai, and Jakarta. So India and Southeast Asia, Asia in general. But you can also see we have some dots in New Zealand and in Japan and in South Korea. So it was a cool thing to do, like these little zoom outs and see where all there might be a couple of Airflow users who represent their city here. If you go to the next slide, we also have Europe, which kind of looks the funniest with the most little little dots. And yeah, Jarek placed 15. That's a very good result. The biggest city was Paris in Europe on place 9. Then we had London, Warsaw, Madrid, and Berlin. So the big tech hubs, which makes sense. They represent a lot of Airflow use here. Now, if you go to the US, we actually had some interesting results. If you click, Africa first. Wanted to shout out Lagos because we have Victor here today. Talks about the recent meetup there. And the city with the most Airflow users in Africa is definitely Lagos, and it was globally on place 13, so on the global level then. Now the next slide is the US, and if you just look at this map here, and if you're like me, not from the US directly, maybe you don't really see that there's anything odd with it. You can see these clusters around tech hubs, which all makes sense. And at first I didn't think much about it, and I just took that slide, and then I thought, oh, actually, yeah, I thought the big bubble is New York at first, but yeah, New York is more north, right? So I looked up what is actually the city with the most respondents in the US, and I got Indian Beach, and I was like, okay, I've never heard of a city called Indian Beach before. Maybe that's a city where there's like a big tech hub, a big company with a lot of Airflow users. Could be. 76 people said that, but it was, if you click one more time, it was a little moment. I was like, yeah, I'm not entirely sure what's happening here. And I looked up the city, and it has 230-ish inhabitants. It's a small city in North Carolina. I didn't see anything that there was like a big company there or something like that. So this is a good lesson for everyone working with data. Always check if your results make sense in context. So what's happening here? People fill out the survey and they have the field for their city, which is actually a drop down. So you start typing and then you get your city. Jarek realized what happened, which is important because if you do a free text field, you will get spellings and like spellings in different languages and a nightmare to parse. And if you try a regex, then nothing good ever happens afterwards. So I'm very grateful that there's a drop down. But I think what happened is people wanted to filter to see Indian cities. Like we have a lot of Airflow users in India, and then maybe they didn't immediately see their city pop up because there's so many, or they just saw Indian beach and were thinking, yeah, I'm close to the beach. That works. So it makes sense. And I think that is what happened here. So good little side note, always check your results. Do they make sense? In this case, we are all kind of domain experts. Like we all kind of know where our big Airflow users, and that this might not be the city with the most Airflow users. But if you work with data where you don't actually understand the context, this is how mistakes happen. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now this was a more reasonable result. Who are the people who use Airflow? And as expected, Indian Beach Summit. Yeah, I mean, it is at the beach. The naming is correct. We had 61.5% data engineers, as expected. The biggest contingent of Airflow users are data engineers, or hold a top job title as data engineers. But we also had a lot of other titles, like analytics engineer, solutions architect, and other like related engineering titles. And I thought this was really cool to see because, yes, we have a core persona that we work with and that is involved in the project, but it's also branching out. And as everyone who has worked in any tech job knows, sooner or later you get to work with data. So sooner or later, Airflow does become relevant. If you have to do repeated work with data, it doesn't matter if your job title is a software engineer, you might gravitate towards using Airflow. If you go to the next slide, please. All right, so apologies, this is a little small here, but this is basically drawn from the detailed results that I have like a folder with a lot of plots in. The general use cases are the infographic, but I thought the most interesting thing about what is Airflow actually used for is if you split it up between years of experience with Airflow use. So we had about 2,000 people with less than 2 years of experience. And there you can see you have a lot of use of Airflow for ETL use cases, as expected, the bread and butter, and then a little bit for infrastructure management, MLOps, and machine learning and Gen AI. And if you step that up, so the second part is between 2 and 5 years of experience, and at the bottom you can see people with 5 or more years of Airflow experience. So the real Airflow veterans. And you can see there's still a lot of use for ETL use cases, even more. But what is really increasing is using Airflow for these other less common use cases. So 20% for infrastructure management, 30%, almost a third, for machine learning and MLOps already at this point, and 13.3% for Gen AI workflows specifically. And this is one metric that I'm interested to see how it will develop over the years. If you compare these to last year, we didn't have a big jump, but I think this is a case of the law of small numbers, because last year we had so much less responses, and we basically just asked like the core Airflow user who maybe already is using Airflow for a lot of use cases. And this year we got a really good sample of the general community. So that's the first thing I'm going to check in a year from now, when we get the results from next year's survey, is how this will compare to next year's use case breakdown. All right. So this question was, which features do you currently use in Airflow? So what you see here is basically feature adoption. And this is really cool for what is planned in 3.0, because there's a pretty big expansion of data sets to data assets. And that feature already has a 48% adoption. And it's interesting because if you would have asked me, I would have thought that maybe decorators would have won this race, but datasets were slightly more adopted. People could select several in these. But decorators also got over 40% share, which makes me happy because I really like my decorators and use them for everything, as well as dynamic task mapping and standalone DAG processors. And then there was one result that surprised me a little. If you click once more, object storage. A fourth of people say that they use the object storage feature. Now, this is a feature that was introduced only in Airflow 2.9, which is already okay, that's very recent. And it was still experimental at the time when we ran the survey. So I wonder, and this is another case of taking your results in context, did people really realize this means the object storage feature inside of Airflow that helps you interact with S3, Azure, and other blob storages, and is really great, I use it all the time, or did people not realize that this was a specific Airflow feature and were just thinking, yes, I use object storage in my pipeline? And I think this is really important, especially as we get like these larger cohorts of people answering our questions, that we keep in mind that not everyone thinks about Airflow the same way we do and as much as we do. So for us, I mean, for me, if I hear object storage, I think of the Airflow feature first, and then of, yeah, that's also the name for actual object storage. But a lot of people, I think, they see their pipelines as a much more homogeneous object, and they might not even realize where are the lines between Airflow and other tools. We see that all the time when we get questions, something isn't working and it ends up to being an issue in the other tool and not an actual Airflow problem. So I think this is something to keep in mind, especially as we design the questions for next year, to be very explicit in these cases. All right, so the next slide. This was asking for feature requests. We did not put DAG versioning as an option. That's why you don't have like a bar that's almost at 100%, because it was already in development and it was clear that it was going to happen. So the question was just about other features. And again, submitting new DAGs externally via API was rated pretty highly. I'm currently not aware of an AIP related to that, but there might be. I haven't read all of the future AIPs. But this is something that has sustained interest from the Airflow community. Data cataloging also was pretty high up, so data observability, some people's minds. Native cloud executors, that's something that's generally in development. And more support for datasets, which is really great. And multi-tenancy, for which there is an AIP already open for 3.1 or future. And there are some more general things like better support for compute and processing data in Airflow workers. And signal-based scheduling, which I think is very close to what's going to happen in 3.0 with event-driven scheduling based on message queues. So that's another thing that's coming, and better support for machine learning MLOps is again a more general answer. And I think that you can null the logical date is something that puts us into that direction as well. So yeah, general alignment. I'm not going to read through all of these. This was the other question about requests. So what could be improved in Airflow? And what one are actually examples, how-to, and documentation. And I think this is again a case of thinking about the user who might not ever have looked at the Airflow repository and has a much different entry point to thinking about Airflow. And if there exists a feature, but there isn't documentation that helps them and is easy enough for them to understand at their level, depending on how long they have used Airflow, then they might not ever get to use that feature. So it makes sense that this is high up, but it's definitely something that all of us want to work on and will work on. The UI. Brent is going to demo all of the improvements in a little bit. So this is something that will be delivered in 3.0. And just from every time I talk somewhere, like on LinkedIn, about the UI, I just have to share a UI screenshot and people love it. It's easiest engagement ever because everyone's so excited for the Airflow 3 UI. Yeah, the other three that were pretty high up here are testing, which makes me happy. It means people are testing their DAGs, which is good. And logging, monitoring, and alerting, and local developer experience. So people are really thinking about how do they run their Airflow pipelines and how, again, do they observe them, figure out what's happening, and can they make it easier to write DAGs. All right, so the next slide, that's one that didn't make it into the infographic, but I thought it was really interesting. We had a very specific question here. We talked about new languages in Airflow. The question was, since in Airflow 3.0, there will be support for tasks in languages other than Python. Initially, it will be experimental for Golang. So that's the initial implementation that comes out in 3.0. But later, the idea is to add more tasks based on a task SDK now that that's possible with the architecture change. And we actually had a little debate when we decided on that question, because I don't know who initially put in SQL as an option, but my initial reaction was, well, you can already run SQL-based tasks with the SQL execute query operator. Or if you run a dbt core project, like that's already really possible. And I think I made a comment and was like, should we take this out? I mean, it doesn't really make sense. And then we discussed it and we're thinking, well, actually that gives us some insight if people select that. And that's exactly what happened. So if you click once, that was another, so we have SQL, almost 50% of the people filling out the survey saying that they want support for tasks in SQL. And this is not an actual task for like Ash and the people working to implement other languages. This is a task for people like me, developer advocates, in helping people using the tools that already exist. So they realize their wish is already fulfilled. Yeah, going back to SQL. Yeah, but other than that, we got some interesting results. We have Java with 10%. Scala, which surprised me. I hadn't heard that much about Scala, but there's definite interest there with 8.7. Go with 6.6. Those will be the happy people once 3.0 comes out. And also JavaScript, Rust, R, and a little bit for C++ and ++. Little side note, there was you could have the other field. There were a couple of people who were worried that Python support would be dropped. So that's another thing. Yeah, there were a couple of people who said, no, please, I like Python. And yeah, I had this moment of, oh no. So that's something that we have to be careful when we talk about Airflow 3.0, that we make clear support for other languages means additionally. It doesn't mean Python is going to be dropped. Definitely not. The next one, if we talk about Airflow 3, we want to know, well, how fast will people use Airflow 3? So we had one question that was, which version are you currently using? And that's actually quite positive, I think, like over a third are on 2.8 or later. Then we have another third on 2.4 to 2.7. The reason we use 2.4 as a cutoff here is because that's when datasets first came out. So that's like a kind of the first major step inside of the minor version releases that were part of 2. Airflow 2. Couple of people who are on early Airflow 2 versions, and then we had 3.8% who are still on Airflow 1. And at least 80% of those later said that they are willing and hoping to upgrade soon to Airflow 2. So it's not that bad. But this is also important for us. And I think I was really glad when the discussions first started around Airflow 3, around like, how do we make it as easy as possible to upgrade, break as little as possible, have upgrade utilities, because upgrading is hard when you are in a big company. It's easy for people like us who spin up a lot of Airflow deployments and don't actually work on production pipelines that much. But if you are in a company with thousands of people and you need approval of 20 people before you can push a new DAG, then upgrading a major Airflow version is a big thing. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, there are still people on Airflow 1 and they all have a reason. Like, they didn't choose to be on Airflow 1. What was good to see was 20% said that they upgrade whenever there is a newer version available, which was cool. And another 22% said once a quarter, and then we get the majority with a slim margin every 6 months. And then we have people who upgrade every 12 months or fewer. So this is kind of what we can expect once Airflow 3 comes out. There will be like a 20%, maybe a little less because it's a major version, but there will be early adopters who will get in there and be super excited. But then it will kind of trickle in. So this means that it will keep being relevant to help people upgrade from Airflow 2 to Airflow 3. And there will still be Airflow 2 questions in 3 years, in 4 years, and people asking for help with it. So it's good if we keep that knowledge somewhere. And sometimes I still see an Airflow 1 question in the wild, which I can't answer. I have never used Airflow 1. That was before my time, but it will happen and we will get a staggered adoption of Airflow 3. Hopefully faster in general than from 1 to 2. I hope people are excited to jump into the newest versions. All right, so now since we're talking about the Airflow community and we are at a community event, there was a question, what would you like to see from the Airflow community? And again, documentation and examples was pretty high up, more best practices, more virtual events, getting started resources, and more local meetups and events like the one that was just in Lagos. So that was good to see. There was a high, through all the answers, there was a pretty high percentage of people requesting. And I also wanted to pick out, because we're at a town hall, how many people are participating in devlist discussions or in the town halls. 60% said, I did not know I could, which also means 60% learned that they could when they saw that question. That's how I want to frame it. And 2.9% said that they actively participate. So that's all of you who are actively in this town hall. You're part of the 2.9%. Okay, I think there's a couple more slides. This one, I'm not going to read through all of them. Where do you get your information? That's important for all of us. If there's a new feature and we want to get the message out, where do we put that? Documentation, of course. But also the Airflow website and the Airflow blog, Medium blog, all of these resources are highly frequented. And if you click once more, tiny thing, but this made me happy, the astronomer documentation also got a couple of votes because we have tutorials there as well about different Airflow features. But also a lot of people looking at the GitHub discussions directly or still looking at Stack Overflow, GitHub issues, summit videos, and webinars. Only 10% in the Slack. I said that when I was presenting this at a larger webinar. I want that number to be higher next time. So invite your friends to the Airflow Slack. It's a very good place to get the newest information. Also, I haven't numbered it out here, but there were several people who said ChatGPT in the other field, who wrote that in, which is a double-edged sword. ChatGPT will give you outdated code already now, sometimes with deprecated parameters. It will give outdated code with Airflow 3 potentially, and this is something we have to anticipate. How many people are using LLMs now, and what is the lag until LLMs are updated, and just generally what will they hallucinate, and how can we deal with LLM hallucinations potentially of people. This is the other one that I wanted to showcase here, specifically contributors. 2.4% of the survey respondents are regular contributors, so they discuss, review, or submit PRs, and another 8.6% are rarely contributing whenever they need something specific. And again, 48% said they didn't know they actually could contribute to Airflow, and now they know. So that's almost half of 5,200. That's 2,500 people who just learned they can contribute to Airflow. And I hope a couple of them will find their way into the PRs. This was one about career that I just thought was really cool. We asked people, do they think having a good foundation in Airflow will have a positive impact on the next 5 years in their career? And a third said it's already central to their career. So that's a lot of people who rely on Airflow for their career. Another third, another 30% said it already had a positive impact. So not central, but a large positive impact. And 25% said that they're right now pursuing education. Because of their career, they specifically want to learn Airflow. So I thought this was really cool because it shows that Airflow doesn't just touch people's work life every day, the same way that some tools like Zoom touch our lives and are important, but people are actually specifically learning Airflow and getting good at it to promote their career. So it's important to people's lives directly. Me here, I also got a job that only exists because Airflow exists. And I think this is my last slide, second to last. Just generally, because it's a super nice one, would you recommend Airflow? And we had 58.5% who said they're very likely to recommend Airflow. So there's actually quite a large number of people who are enthusiastic about Airflow. Another 30.2% who said they are likely to recommend it. And it was really rare to see people who do not recommend it. This sums up to a 90.7% recommendation rate if you drop the non-responders. Otherwise, it's a little under 90%. So for this question, I decided to drop the non-responders. And yeah, on the last slide, that is just generally thank you to everyone who filled out the survey. Like, this results would not exist without you. They would also not exist, obviously, without Airflow, without all of the committers, everyone who puts so much work and effort into all of the features and making Airflow better. Everyone who helped with the questions, filling out the survey and promoted it. And special thanks to Bree, obviously, who took us into the 5,000. I still can't believe 5,000 people answered the survey. I double checked all of the numbers over and over. Like, every time I got something like 2,000 people said they use data sets, I was like, is this true? Like, I'm running it again. And also Erin, who I don't think she's on this call, she made the infographic. Like, it looks amazing. You should all look at it. It's at the link that's on the slide here. And she made that look really cool, professionally designed Airflow infographic. And yeah, that's it. If you have questions, you can send me a Slack message, like specific, hey, the people who use the salary executor, how many years of experience do they have? Like, things like that. There are a million combinations. Just send me a message and I can see if I can figure it out.
Thank you, Tamara. Really appreciate all your hard work on this. I think I appreciate the shout out, but getting people to fill it out is just a small step, but actually understanding the results the way you do and analyzing them and spending this much time is so impressive. So round of applause for Tamara on getting this together. Really, really amazing work. And yeah, if you are on this call and you didn't fill it out this year, don't worry, I'm coming for you next year. So with that being said, again, drop any questions for Tamara in this chat. She can address them there. And if someone could actually drop a link to the survey, I can't do that right now because I'm presenting. I would appreciate that if people haven't gotten to take a look at the infographic yet. And with that, another exciting presentation today. We get to hear what's going on with Airflow 3 from Constance.
Thanks a lot, Brianna. So I'm going to have a hard time following it up after Tamara. That was a fantastic presentation and I learned a lot. So next slide, please. I don't have to tell any of you that Airflow 3 is going to be the biggest Apache Airflow release, in my opinion, ever, but I guess candidly since 2020, the 2.0 release. So Airflow's popularity has grown significantly over the past 5 years, and making this a release highly anticipated. If you go to the next slide, please. I mean, so just some quick stats for growth. We have now approximately 30 million monthly downloads for Apache Airflow every month, which is a 30%, sorry, a 30 times increase since 2020. We know that, we estimate that approximately 80,000 companies are using Airflow today, which is, again, a massive increase from 2020 as well. So this release really has been 4 years in the making. From a timeline perspective, we cut our first beta February 28th, so a few weeks ago, and we've consistently been releasing beta since. We're anticipating the first RC to be on March 31st, and then a GA roughly mid-April. Next slide, please. So what have we done, and where are we at right now? Ultimately, I'm going to start basically group some of these features and give some updates as we go along, but there's many things that I'm not going to be able to get to today in this update. So if you do have any specific questions, just reach out and we can let you know where we're at. So DAG versioning. At this point in time, we have improved DAG history tracking in the UI, and DAG bundling allows retrieving of DAGs from sources like Git, NFS, and so on and so forth. I was really excited yesterday when I spun up an Airflow 3 and I tried a task, and then I removed a task. Sorry, run a DAG, removed a task, reran the DAG, and I could actually see the DAG run as it ran at that time. I know that sounds like a little ridiculous to get that excited, but this has been such a massive pain point for anybody for all Airflow users since like the 1.x series. And I'm just so happy that we finally have resolved that. And so that was really exciting to see. Backfills improvements as well. They're now managed by the scheduler for better scalability, and you can now trigger backfills through the UI and API. As you can see in the screenshot, it does exist. It's real. It's going to be there for 3.0. And again, another one of those things that I'm super excited about. Next slide, please. All right, the run anywhere, anytime in any language. Where are we at? So the transition to a client-server architecture is more or less done, and we did that for improved flexibility. This transition enables execution across different clouds and also powers the SDKs in different languages. So like I said, that's getting wrapped up. There's a few small changes that are happening probably this week, but it really should be fully finalized by the end of next beta. Edge Executor as well is progressing well. It's being built on the task execution interface, and is something that will be available in 3.0 as well. Next slide, please. Data assets and event-driven scheduling. So as we can see, we have data assets in the UI now. Brent, sorry to steal your thunder. I didn't realize you were coming after me with a demo. It does exist. I'm not sure if that's in main at this point in time. I did take this last night from just like the local branch that I have. But I just wanted to highlight that, like I said, it's there, and that we're finally finished the evolution from data sets to data assets. And we also have the new asset-centric syntax with Python decorators. There's a few examples already in the examples directory in the Airflow project. You can go check them out. Event-driven scheduling is also done. So external event triggers are now supported, and they are built upon the data asset framework. Next slide, please. So security and usability improvements. UI modernization. I'm not going to talk too much about it because we have Brent. All I wanted to say is that this was a massive project. We basically, in my opinion, it felt like we rewrote Airflow along with the task SDKs. And so now the UI is React-based with fast API, and Brent will tell you a lot more about it. Task isolation, like I said, is also done. So now tasks have no direct access to the metadata database, which, talking to customers and users, like people have been doing it. They know they have been doing it, and they know they should not have been doing it. But ultimately speaking, people understand exactly why we finally cut the access, and are very excited about what that powers. Enhanced CLI security. Like I said, that's progressing well as well. There's going to be API-based improvements for better CLI security to be able to take into context user permissions. Next slide, please. All right. So what I found very, very exciting is that throughout this process, we're seeing over 100 developers contribute to Airflow every single or every month, which is, like I said, really exciting. It shows that the community is very engaged and that, people really do love Airflow. So, like I said, thank you very much, and I hope to see more contributions happening. Where we're at still is we're seeing some improvement, or we're implementing some improvements in packaging and multi-language support. So expect to see some more progress in that within the next few weeks. And then last but not least, we need your help. So now that we have betas out, and it is very easy to get a beta going with Breeze, we need you to come and help test the beta release and provide some feedback. We're looking specifically for people to go ahead and just run regular DAGs and see what happens, and to also play around with the UI and give us some usability feedback from the UI. The UI is something that is constantly evolving, and so what comes out in 3.0 is really just the start, and we'll be making many more enhancements throughout the 3.x series. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Constance. The last update before the release. Well, I guess the next town hall will be April 7th. So I suppose, or around that time, the first Friday of the month. So I suppose maybe it won't be the GA by then, but it'll be close. All right, cool. So with that, let's move on to hear from Brent. I know you're all excited about the UI updates in Airflow 3, so let's hear it.
Hey, yeah, can I take over the screen share? Hey everyone, my name is Brent. I am a front engineer at Astronomer. Been working on the Airflow UI, and as Constance said, we, rewrote it for Airflow 3. And so just jumping into it now, I'm just going to give a demo of what we have as of, beta 2, which we just cut yesterday. So yeah, we've been working on, first off, this homepage here. You can see we can switch between light modes and dark modes. And so we're still working on this homepage of giving you quick information to summarize your Airflow deployment. And we can see the health of our status, of our different components like our DAG processor and scheduler, as well as in the past day, give me a summary of DAG runs and task instances, asset events, etc. Jump into our DAGs, get a DAG list, see what's run recently. And then what else do I want to show off? Let's jump into this DAG. We have a DAG page here. Fun thing is, a bit of this interface is similar, of like having a grid view on the left and having various tabs on the right. But one big thing we did change recently is to put the graph as well. And so if I make sure I have a DAG run selected, I can decide, do I want to see my DAG page through a grid interface, or do I want to see the graph as the way to navigate around to jump between tasks? And then you can resize everything as you see fit, however you want it to work. And we've also added DAG versioning to that. So I'm actually going to trigger this DAG run, have that run, going to go to this DAG code here, change it, and then the DAG processor should pick that up. And I believe we should get it where the version changes, in the middle of the run. So we have two different DAG versions. If we look at our tasks instances here, we see where the version changed. And if we go to then the graph, we could see the difference here of, okay, here's that V2 where I added the maps task should happen first versus V1 where it doesn't. So you get like live updates with what is happening in your version changes. We'll be adding more there to help you see where versions change, but that is some of the DAG versioning working out. We can go back to the main DAG page here. As well, we see our backfills running. If I go over here, we do run backfill, we can create a new one. I'm gonna go, let's just pick some arbitrary dates here. Start from there. Okay, that will give me 23 runs. Let's make a max of 5. Well, let's only do the missing ones. Cool. Well, all right, let's live demo. That's what we get sometimes. Something's angry at me. But here we do see the other backfills that have happened on this DAG. If we jump over now, let's say we go to the assets page. Right now it's basic list. We're still working on this part, but if I click into any single asset here, I get the graph of the asset dependencies. So everything connected to this individual asset, either direct upstream and downstreams, which we see highlighted in the larger edges here, but also anything that's possibly connected to this asset, I can see immediately. And also I can see if any of these DAGs are paused or unpaused of like, oh, why does this asset have no events? Oh, well, because maybe this DAG here is sitting paused. Well, that would be why I don't have any events. Also have the ability here to, just like the old UI, create an asset event, but we have a new ability to materialize a asset event, which means just trigger the DAG run upstream to create the asset event, I guess, naturally through the DAG versus through a manual creation. If we then jump into one of these DAGs, we've added in the DAG dependencies into the graph. Let's select the run first. Integrated the DAG dependencies into the graph. So we have options here. I want to see the DAG graph just only as its tasks. That's all I care about. I want to see the external conditions, just immediate upstreams and downstreams that's connected to my DAG. So I can see we have little logical gates because it's this is a asset triggered DAG that is either if the asset 1 is updated or both 2 and 3 are updated. And so we can see we have our and or operators from anyone that remembers there, maybe like engineering 201 classes. To show us if we have a run selected, we also get the events, and we can see that, hey, 3 other DAG runs were created by this asset event. So that's useful to know as I go over to just see basically that asset graph, but now with my DAG graph inside of it. So I still see the individual task, and if I have many tasks in this DAG run, I mean, on this DAG, I could see that basically as a task group inside of this larger dependency. Larger dependency graph. I'm trying to think other big features we've been doing. There's a lot. Or maybe there's people in the chat that want to see anything. Oh, does the component show why things are unhealthy yet? I don't think so. We should update that. I don't know if we've like wired it all up. I think some of the finishing touches on like, let's say these like this dashboard page, if I go back to a DAG and go to, we get like an overview page. This will be some of the last things we work on. Will be like what summaries do we really want to show everybody? And so I think that will always be a continual process to try to create the more useful insights to show you, like what do you want to see here? If I go back to that simple bash operator that's designed to fail, we also see like quick links to here's like the 3 most recent fail, or like here's in the past 24 hours my failed task instances. Quickly see the logs of it, filter to just the errors. If I want to see more, I can go to the full log and I can see everything about those logs and still have the sort of filters we had before. So show me only the task logs and only the errors. Trying to think what else we have in here. Either feels like a lot or it feels like nothing.
It's a lot.
But yeah, here, I'll just open up chat again and answer any questions while I have this all open. Instance level dashboard. We have been doing a task level dashboard, yes. So as the grid view we had in the previous UI is that there's like many different levels you can kind of see in the breadcrumb here to view information. So I can see it at just the whole DAG level. I can see it if I select the DAG run, I can see just that DAG run level. I can also see it at if I click a row, I can get a task level. And then if I click on a task instance, I can get a task instance level. And I guess you can drill further into that of a mapped task instance level. And then, if we go back to our should failed, we have our multiple different tries too. So yeah, I think that's like what we want to build out as well is if you want to see last 24 hours for this individual task, how it's been going, that is what this overview page is. And we can see the task instances for that or like audit log events associated with it. Yeah, I think that's all we have for now. There's a lot more I would like to be doing. Of course, we have like, yeah, you can see our like the normal browse and admin tabs we had before have been porting over bit by bit. I don't think I have everything useful on this on my local instance here. But yeah, we're continuing to refine it. So please go check out beta 2, leave comments, and also just understand it's a beta. So there's a whole lot that I'm still working on improving, but it's very useful to either on the Airflow Slack, we have an Airflow UI dev channel. Let me bring that up maybe. Let me find my computer. Where are we at? Yeah, Airflow 3 UI. Feel free to, comment on this channel. Anything you see, what you like, what you don't like, just have basic questions. And yeah, that'd be, or, doesn't have to be everything, not everything has to be a full written up GitHub issue. So yeah, reach out.
So I think just to add to that, like the things specifically, at least from a product perspective, that I know that I'm looking for feedback on are UX navigation specifically, and anything that's missing from that aspect. Um, charts. What other charts do you want to see? We're going to be porting some more of them from Airflow too, but it is something that we do want to improve upon. So like what is missing? And then last but not least, assets and asset views. Basically, we're just trying to, from a priority perspective, make sure that we don't have any feature degradation at that point in time, but there's a lot of places that we can go with that. And so if you have any thoughts, I really do want to hear about them. So please reach out. Thanks. Sorry for jumping in.
No, I love it. Thank you, Constance, and thank you, Brent. Brent's 2 of his PRs for this were in contesting for PR of the month this month, fittingly so. And he won with one. So I think that's my first time seeing one person with 2 PRs and being voted against each other for PR of the month. So well done, Brent, and well done everyone else who's done work on this, and appreciate your hard work.
Oh, I really won't take credit for the PR that removed the old UI. That was an entire community effort. I think we had 12 contributors on it. So I'm just
Awesome.
PR.
Yeah, well, shout out to everyone. Really appreciate that hard work. And with that, our final presentation today, before I give you guys a bunch of reminders, is from Victor, who opened up our Lagos chapter this month.
Hi, good day, everyone. Can you hear me? Hey, all right. So, yeah, Brian already introduced me. I'm Victor. I work as a data engineer here in Nigeria. And yeah, just a little background about me. I've been in data for about 7 years, worked with a couple of companies from retail, QSR, currently working in finance and technology. And yeah, interestingly, I've contributed once to Airflow. Have this little click stuff that I did, and Potik helped me review that PR. We moved it in 2.10. And yeah, so we had this meetup in Lagos and a couple of beautiful experience, right? But then we just want to share some insights that we got from the event and hope people who are here who want to host a meetup in their city could just get some information from that. So nothing complex. I just put down 6 very good points. And what are the 6 points? If you're hosting a meetup in your city, would just recommend, I think the very important thing is start early. I started discussing about this with Brianna sometime last year, and it took, I mean, a good number of months, and then we brought it to limelight in the month of March. And of course, second step will be talk to like-minded people. Of course, I discussed with Brianna, discussed with a couple of persons in the community, which brings me to my third point: people who work in data. Find a local community, because you may not be able to just do it by yourself. There are persons who are in your city who have a similar community. It could just be a regular tech meetup. It could be a data meetup. Like here in Lagos, Nigeria, we have a community, young data professionals community. Frequently have some meetups to share insights, and of course, getting insights from them on, okay, how have previous events performed, what locations are available for us to use, what's the best day or the best time to fix the event so that you could have good attendance. You'll get that information handy from any community if you're part of one. If you're not part of one, feel free to ask questions and join one around you. Fourth point would be find your speakers, your venue, and your volunteers. Make sure that's very, very important. If you don't have a venue, the event would not hold, obviously. And the next point is make noise about it, right? I posted this on LinkedIn, posted it on my WhatsApp handles for people who are direct contacts so they could attend. Just make even more noise about it until the day of the event, because someone may just hear a day before the event and decide to attend. So what about D-Day? So we could go to the next slide. What happens on the day of the event itself? So if you look closely, sorry, that picture is not very clear, but I'm sure it's a bit familiar for those who use Airflow. That happened on D-Day, right? During a live demo, and an error held us for a couple of minutes, right? So my first take home there is be prepared for uncertainties, right? So once it's a live demo, just be prepared for uncertainties and be flexible enough to adjust the flow of the program so people don't get bored and people don't get tired of just seeing the error screen. So we had to just switch to the panel session and then come back to resolve the error. Create an enabling atmosphere for people to have fun and people to network. I know many people who got new contacts. They will likely have jobs from there. Their next job will likely come from the community of data persons. And of course, go with the flow. I had to add a in between there, right? So just go with the flow and make sure you have a very good time in the event. We did for about 3 to 4 hours, and it was a very wonderful event. And next slide, please. So, yep. So the last would be make sure you capture the moment, right? These are a few pictures. Of course, we had Brianna even present to us there virtually, right? And people were happy to hear from her. And yeah, make sure you capture the moments. Invest in good photography. If you could get better cameras or get someone to volunteer to take pictures or hire a photographer, and just make sure you capture the moments. You will never have those moments the same way at the same time with the same people ever again. That'll be all from me. Thank you very much. Hope you got something and hope you host yours in your own city soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Victor. And it's really nice to see people like you kind of come forward and put together events like this. This was your first chapter event and you had 150 registrants and 40 attendees, which is very, very good stats for a first chapter meetup and just a meetup in general. So yeah, see, someone just said even in the UK, I heard about the Lagos event. So that means you did a good job promoting it as well. So if anyone's interested in doing a meetup in their city, it needs to be a place where there are a lot of Airflow users. It can't just be, you know, somewhere where there isn't a hub of Airflow users. So keeping that in mind, maybe if you don't live in a city where there's a ton of Airflow users, maybe there's one you can travel to where we could do an event. Definitely Indian Beach will be coming in toward the end of the year. Just kidding. Although now I feel like I need to visit it. So just a couple updates from me, you all. And if anyone has any questions for Victor, anyone who presented today can be found on Airflow Slack. So with that being said, if I'm sure everyone on this call already is, but make sure to join Airflow Slack. See if there's a meetup chapter in your city by going to our meetups page. And then one main thing I want you to take away today is that the call for papers is still open for Airflow Summit. Okay. So if you haven't submitted your talk, you need to do so by March 21st for round 1. So I highly recommend this if you need a visa, if you're not located in the United States. This will be taking place in Seattle, Washington, October 7th through 9th. start your visa paperwork before your talk is even accepted. So that way, if it is accepted, you can get the ball rolling and you won't run into any issues along the way. On the Airflow Summit website, there's also in the dropdown under attend, there's a link to convince your boss. And there's a template letter there for getting management to pay your way to the conference. So whether that be for a speaking slot or even just a ticket, highly recommend submitting that as well as early as possible. Maybe before budgets are decided for the second half of the year. Now is great timing for that. Now, if you're presenting on Airflow 3, we're doing a second round for the CFP after the first round, right? And so if you are presenting on Airflow 3, you can wait until round 2 until all of the, specifics are in place for that. If you think you can submit a talk for Airflow 3 prior, definitely welcome that as well. It's just you have a little bit more time if your talk is about that specific topic. But if it's not, I highly, highly, highly recommend submitting in round 1. And of course, get your ticket now. It's super early bird. It's very, very discounted. So highly recommend getting your Airflow Summit ticket now as opposed to later. It's only going to cost you and your company more money if you wait. Okay, so with that being said, yes, early October is beautiful in Seattle, so I'm really excited for those that gorgeous weather. I don't think it'll rain. I know it's notorious for raining there, but I don't think it will. So we'll put out all that good vibes and hope for a great one. And yeah, with that, I really appreciate everyone joining today. I loved our presentations. Thank you to our presenters. And if you want to present next month, just shoot me a note and I'd be happy to hear from you. All right, thank you, everyone. Talk to you all soon.